It's time for Behind the Hits, where great country songwriters talk about great country songs. Proudly broadcasting on today's best country on the American Forces Radio Network. I'm your host, Ty Hager, and this week on the show, we've got a couple of writers responsible for a couple of hits.
So bring on the rain. She left the suds in the bucket and the clothes hanging out on the line. More than a memory.
Later on in the hour, we'll talk with hit songwriter Billy Montana, and we'll also do a segment of Songwriting 101 with Rand Bishop. But first, we're going to chat with this guy.
Tomorrow, I'm gonna leave here.
Yeah, the view I love the most is my front porch looking in. I swear by the moon and the stars in the sky.
We are on Music Row, I know, hard to believe. Talking with big-time songwriter Frank Myers. So, Frank, you grew up in a musical family. That must have been very cool.
Yeah, it was great to grow up in a musical family because there was always music and everybody was making music. My dad was a great fiddle player, guitar player, singer, and my brother played guitar. My grandmother played old-time banjo style, with the thumb, like Grandpa Jones. Uncles played. I mean, everybody played.
You guys must have had some great holidays, great family get-togethers.
We did, a lot of music.
And so you were one of those child entertainers. You started performing publicly when you were, 11?
Yeah. I believe the first time I performed out in public, it was a contest, a show they had back in Dayton, Ohio called Star Trail. Mm-hmm. And, I played when I was 11. I won the contest 3 times, got to be a Star Trail star.
Well, that must have been exciting, though, just for a little kid.
Oh, it was. It was. I mean, to not know really anything about the music business or whatever, I thought I was a star.
And then it was 1981, 30 years ago, you made the big move from Ohio to here, Music City. Yeah,
I knew if I wanted to advance my career that I needed to be in Nashville or LA or someplace, where it was really happening.
And then you got a cool gig playing with Eddie Raven, who you actually started writing songs with, right?
When I first started working with Eddie, I was mainly just a guitar player, and I had written a couple songs and had showed them to him. He liked my melodies, and we actually did a show with Tanya Tucker, and she gave Eddie an idea called Changes, title. We got together, and he showed me the song, and we ended up finishing the song. He sent it to Tanya, she loved it, and ended up recording it. It was funny because I remember being that was the first song I ever had recorded by a major artist. When I got a copy of it, obviously I listened to it over and over and over and over. And there was a line in the song that went something like, neither one of us will ever change, we're both the same, and that's a shame. Because when we were together, it was right, we had it all, you and I. For some reason, you and I stuck out to me. And
you know what? I know where this is going.
for some reason, that title stood out to me. And one day I was sitting around an apartment that my wife and I had out in Antioch, Tennessee. We had one car, and I used to take her to work. She worked second shift. I'd take her to work and then pick her up. One morning, before she went to work, I was sitting in the living room with a guitar and just got a rhyming dictionary I didn't even know how to use. And I was just sitting around trying to write a country song. I mean, George Jones type country song. Mm-hmm. And I had been trying to write some things like that for a while, and she just walked in and out of the blue, she said, you haven't had a lot of good luck with that kind of stuff. Why don't you try writing a Lionel Richie type song? And I said okay, and it kind of went in one ear and out the other. But it must have hit a nerve somewhere, because I took her to work and I came back home, and that title, You and I, just came out and came up with this melody, and I wrote You and I.
Just you and I, sharing our love together. We made it, you and I.
Considered one of the greatest duets in country music history, there's Eddie Rabbitt and Crystal Gayle with a song that went to number 1 on the country charts and was a top 10 crossover hit as well. That's You and I, written for his wife by my guest this week on Behind the Hits, Frank Myers. Let's talk about Lone Star. You've had quite a bit of success with them, and actually you went on and produced some of Richie McDonald's solo stuff.
Mm-hmm. Met Richie back when I played guitar with Eddie Raven. Actually, Lone Star wasn't even together then. It was Richie had a band, and a couple of the guys that were in Lone Star were in another band. And they opened both bands, Richie's band and that other band, had opened for Eddie a few times, and that's how I met all those guys. And once Richie moved to town, then I caught up with him again after Lone Star had Tequila Talkin' or whatever it was they had. Mm-hmm. One of the first couple singles when John and Rich were still in the band. And, saw Richie out somewhere, and we got to talking about old times, and so we wrote to write, and we did, and ended up writing several songs together.
From 2003, there's Lone Star's number 1 song and the Billboard Country Single of the Year, My Front Porch Lookin' In, a tune co-written by my guest this week on Behind the Hits, Frank Myers, who produced lead singer Richie McDonald's 2008 solo album, I Turn to You, and co-produced Richie's If Every Day Could Be Christmas, which would make for one long winter. Well, let's talk a little bit about Chris Young and Tomorrow. I mean, that one's turning out to be a huge hit, and I spoke with your co-writer on that one, Anthony L. Smith, and he said that was one of those that as soon as you wrote it, you guys just had this feeling that it was going to be big. How often does that happen?
Well, you can finish other songs and feel confident that it's a great song and that it could be a big record. That's how we felt about that song. Mm-hmm. That we thought it was a great song. Chris sang it great, and we knew that it was a hit. Mm-hmm. But there's other songs that we have that we know are hits that still haven't seen the light of day. So sure. That's a tricky question because you don't always know for sure if they're going to get cut.
So you can know in your heart that it has the potential to be a hit, but so many things are completely out of your control that you don't know whether or not it will be a hit.
Right.
Tomorrow, I'm gonna leave here. I'm gonna let you go and walk away like every day I said I would. Tomorrow, I'm gonna leave here. Yeah, I'm gonna let you go and walk away like every day I said I would.
The debut single from Chris Young's latest CD, Neon, that's Tomorrow, a tune written by Chris, Anthony L. Smith, and my first guest this week on Behind the Hits, Frank Myers. You're listening to Behind the Hits, where great country songwriters talk about great country songs. I'm your host, Ty Hager, once again giving a shout out and a hearty, heartfelt thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To all of our men and women in uniform listening in 178 countries and U.S. territories, and on 150 Navy ships around the world, as well as to their families and DoD civilians listening on today's Best Country on the American Forces Radio Network. We've got more to come, including my chat with Billy Montana.
So bring on the rain. She left the suds in the bucket and the clothes hanging out on the line.
More than a memory.
And Songwriting 101 with Rand Bishop. But let's continue with hit songwriter Frank Myers at his office on Music Row. And one thing I've noticed, I've interviewed a bunch of you hit songwriters now, and you have several things in common, all of you. But one of the things that is very consistent throughout is that no matter how big a hit you've got on the radio now, it's like you're more focused on what's coming next.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's how we make our living.
Mm-hmm. Well, like Chris Young and Tomorrow, are you still pretty psyched about that one?
Oh, I'm thrilled about it, but I'm not sitting and basking in it. I'm working.
You're not saying, well, I'm going to go to Florida and I'll write another song tomorrow.
Right. And I know Anthony wouldn't have known it at the time, but he and I and Ash Bowers wrote Ash's new single that's called I Still Believe in That.
I was raised on the Bible and the bell, taught to say yes sir and yes ma'am.
There's a new single from Ash Bowers, I Still Believe in That, co-written by Ash along with Anthony L. Smith and my guest this week on Behind the Hits, Frank Myers. Well, it's become kind of a tradition now on Behind the Hits for me to talk with songwriters about tunes that became really big songs that didn't see the light of day for a long period of time. You've got one of those that was a huge hit.
Well, I Swear was written 5 years before it got recorded and went through 2 demos. Everybody in Nashville passed on I Swear. And I felt the first demo just wasn't what it should be. So we decided to do another demo on it. And then that was the demo that John Michael eventually heard, that I personally pitched to him 3 times.
I swear by the moon and the stars in the sky, I'll be there.
And when you compare that one's country success with John Michael Montgomery with its pop success with, I think that was All for One that did it, it's just one of the biggest songs ever.
I swear by the moon and the stars in the skies.
Now, how big a kick did you get out of that? Because it wasn't too long after it was a hit for John Michael Montgomery that All for One put it out, and then it became ridiculous.
It was a bit surreal. I mean,
Right.
At first I thought someone was playing a joke on me or something, you know, because we were totally caught off guard. I mean, no one told us they were doing it. Rick Blackburn just called us over to Atlantic Records here in Nashville and sat us down and played it. So it was a total shock.
And I've always been a firm believer, and I think that I Swear is a good example of this, that a really, really good song, it's just a matter of how you produce it as to what genre it becomes a hit in.
You know, I Swear, I don't know how many versions there are. I mean, it's in different languages. There was a German disco version of it. I have a reggae version of it.
I see the questions in your eyes. I know what's weighing on your mind, but you can be sure I know my part. I swear.
Number 1 for John Michael Montgomery, number 1 for All for One. And I don't know how it did for the German disco band. That's I Swear, written by my guest Frank Myers, along with Gary Baker. Frank Myers' website is frankmyersmusic.com, and Myers is spelled M-Y-E-R-S, so don't screw it up. Coming right up on Behind the Hits, we'll be talking with Billy Montana. But now it's time for a little learning. It's Songwriting 101 with number one songwriter, Rand Bishop.
You really need to know the fundamentals before you start breaking the rules. In other words, what I often say is that clowns learn how to juggle, they learn how to walk the tightrope, they learn how to be acrobats before they start clowning. So you can't really start jamming on your song structure and go into unusual song structures until you know how to structure a verse-chorus song or a chorus-first song, which is often the most hooky song, but it's a song that also gives you some challenges in structure, because by the time you go chorus, verse, what do you do then? Because that third chorus begins to get a little stale. You've heard it twice. Do you go to an instrumental? Do you go to a bridge? Do you go to a little na-na-na thing? What do you do at that point to keep the listener interested and listening to that song and wanting to hear it over and over and over?
Rand's 2 books on songwriting, along with a lot of cool stuff, can be found at his website, randbishop.com. You're listening to Behind the Hits, where great country songwriters talk about great country songs on today's best country, proudly broadcasting on the American Forces Radio Network. I'm your host, Ty Hager, and my next guest has written some cool ones, including the only country song to ever enter the charts at number 1. But I'm not going to tell you what it is. Okay, maybe I'll give you a hint. From his home studio outside of Nashville, I'm happy to have Billy Montana. You know, my guess is that deep down, it is every vegetable farmer's dream to move to Nashville and be a hit songwriter.
Okay. There's a little sarcasm in that. I got out of school and I went to an agricultural college, Cornell University, and so I was hanging around a bunch of Aggies and really liked the people, the lifestyle. And so when I got out of college, I went to work on a farm for 7 years. It was a small vegetable farm. And it was appealing. I mean, it definitely had it was different. It was a unique way of life. And
life on the farm is kind of laid back.
Well, yeah, you think it is. It's kind of like, it's a lot like the music business. There's a lot of things that you don't have control over. And it was hilarious. My wife, I've told her that, going into music is similar to farming. You don't make any money at either of them, and they're both extremely risky. So you got that going for you.
How tough was it to make the decision to take that gamble? Because everybody knows it's a huge gamble to move to Nashville. It
really took us being down to not having much of anything keeping us where we were. In other words, we didn't have a whole lot from a financial standpoint keeping us in upstate New York, and figured that the opportunity to make music was only going to come around once.
And one story that you told me that I think is probably like a really a good story for people that want to pack it all up and move to Nashville. You had like a nibble shortly after you got to town, but it turned out to be quite a while before you got a real bite.
Yeah, when we first moved to Nashville in 1989, and I made an acquaintance through my publishing company with Diana Mayer, who is Brent Mayer's daughter, and Brent produced all of the Judd's records when they were on top of the world, and wrote a bunch of those songs too, like Rockin' with the Rhythm of the Rain and Girls Night Out and Why Not Me. So he was very reputable producer. Probably within 2 or 3 months of my being in Nashville, Diana took one of my songs that I had actually written by myself, and of course that gave me the false impression that, wow, this is easy, because it ended up that, Diana took it, played it for her dad, he loved it, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm gonna have my first lick here, and but then he played it for the Judds, and they passed on it. So as easy as somebody says yes, somebody else can say no to a song, and then it was another 12 years after that before I really had my first big hit with Bring on the Rain.
And then one of the things about that song, the accidental timing of its release.
It was amazing that Helen Darling and I wrote the song, I'm going to say probably in 1999 or 2000. Let's see, probably 99, you know. And so it was recorded in 2000, and Jody Messina's Burn CD came out, I believe, in August of 2000. Well, they put 3 singles out off of that CD before they put Bring on the Rain out as the 4th single. So our scheduled release date, and actually the actual release date for Bring on the Rain, was September 10th, 2001, and that was a Monday. And September 11th, of course, 2001, that's when the towers went down in New York City. And the first time I heard the song was 2 days later on a Thursday. And I had pulled up in my driveway, and we were flying American flag, and the song came on the radio, and it was interwoven with sound bites from Ground Zero, President Bush speaking, rescue workers, news feeds, all interwoven through the song as it played. I don't know who did it. My understanding is that a disc jockey put that together, but whoever did it did an amazing job, and you know, I lost it. It was just a powerful moment and a powerful use of the song. But it also reminds me, you know, when I have heard stories about, you know, people that have been encouraged by Bring on the Rain and what it says, that's really the reason I got into songwriting in the first place. And I'm reminded of that, and I'm glad to be reminded of that, you know, I wanted to communicate things when I was a teenager, you know, a young man growing up. You know, music affected me, and ultimately I wanted to have a part in affecting someone else's life, and Bring on the Rain has done that.
Another day has almost come and gone.
There's Jody Messina along with Tim McGraw and Bring on the Rain, a tune co-written by my guest on Behind the Hits, Billy Montana, and a song which went to number 1 on the country charts and to number 5 on Billboard's adult contemporary charts back in 2001.
The events of 9/11 changed everybody's perspective so much that I really didn't care if it was a hit song or not at that point. You know, I mean, it just put this whole other, I mean, it took away the importance, I guess, of having a hit song.
Kind of put everything in perspective for you, I imagine.
That's exactly what it did. It put everything into perspective.
Well, and then the next really big hit you had after that, also an interesting story behind that one, and another one that, you know, it's like, I think that every hit, like, shines a light a little bit on the music business in Nashville. You had the big Sarah Evans #1.
Right, Suds in the Bucket. That was a song that we, Janai and I wrote that song. Janai just goes by the name Janai. And we wrote Suds in the Bucket intended for a different artist than Sarah Evans. Now, when we go in, people ask all the time, you know, are you writing specifically for someone or just writing a song? And my usual response is, I'm really just trying to write the best song I can that day. Well, we have a thing called a pitch sheet that describes, you know, it has the artist's name, who's producing them, when they're going in the studio, and what type of song they think they're looking for. And this particular, Leanne Womack was on that list, and the description of the song that she was looking for was an up-tempo, fun, traditional sounding country song. So Janai and I decided, man, let's just try for a change to write for an artist specifically. And so we wrote Suds in the Bucket, thinking with that in mind, you know, that description in mind, that for Leanne Womack's project. And it was a cool thing in writing the song, because this is a case where we had the music and we knew the topic that we wanted to write about, but didn't have a title. And I don't usually start that way. I usually like to start with a title because I like to know where I'm going. And but the way the music went, she left the suds in the bucket and the clothes hanging out on the line just kind of fell out of the sky. And when I said that to my co-writer, she was like, "Oh my gosh, I love that. Let's do that." She left the suds in the bucket and the clothes hanging out on the line. And we pitched it to Leanne Womack's camp, and they passed on it, which isn't unusual. I mean, you know, that happens more than not, obviously. But it wasn't too long after that the folks in the Sarah Evans camp heard the song and thought it would be perfect for her, and so she ended up recording it, and man, I thought they did an amazing job.
She was in the backyard, say it was a little past 9, when her prince pulled up a white pickup truck.
There's Sarah Evans with her number one smash, Suds in the Bucket, co-written by my guest on Behind the Hits, Billy Montana. Now, you are one of, I think, about 3 songwriters that can claim to have written a song that debuted at the top of the country charts.
Yes, I am one of 3. The other 2 would be Lee Brice and Kyle Jacobs, and we wrote More Than a Memory for Garth Brooks, and the fact that that song debuted at number 1, I think shows, you know, the power and influence that Garth Brooks had on music in general and country music in particular, because I don't ever see that happening again. It was where a song would actually, the first week that it was out, come in at number 1 on the charts. And I actually, for a moment, was like, wow, is that legit? I mean, can that possibly happen? And, you know, Garth had a great answer for that afterwards, because I kind of, you know, I said that to him, and he was like, you know, he said, country radio gave us a gift when they decided to play the song as much as they did in the first week and introduce the song to the public. They gave us a gift. And he said, he actually called it. He said, I expect the song to drop back on the chart after a little bit. But he said, hey, if it's legit, it'll work its way back up. And he was exactly right, which I know is, you know, how about that, Garth Brooks being right? You know, I mean, he called it. The song came in at number 1 the first week, and then it slowly dropped back to like number 10 on the chart, and then it worked its way back up and spent 2 more weeks at number 2. So it was really a special combination of artist and song and timing, because Garth had been out of circulation for a while, had been in retirement, and people missed him. He was just he had such an impact on country music in the 90s, and so it was so refreshing to have him come back in 2007. And when he put the song out, it was just a magic combination.
People say she's only in my head. It's gonna take time, but I'll forget. People say she's only in my head. It's gonna take time, but I'll forget.
Garth Brooks on Behind the Hits with More Than a Memory, a song which debuted at number 1 in 2007 and was Garth's first number 1 in nearly a decade, co-written by my guest Billy Montana. His website, by the way, is BillyMontana.com. And that is going to wrap it up for another Behind the Hits on today's Best Country, proudly broadcasting on the American Forces Radio Network. I'm your host, Ty Hager. I really want to thank my guests this week, Frank Myers and Billy Montana. Also want to thank, of course, the Nashville Songwriters Association International there at NashvilleSongwriters.com. Coming up next week on Behind the Hits.
Wherever you are, no matter how far, girl, I'm gonna find my way to you, 'cause I'm carrying your love with me, West Virginia down to Tennessee. Every mile of memory
It's big-time songwriter and president of the Nashville Songwriters Association International, Steve Bogard. Next week on Behind the Hits. Behind the Hits is produced by Bass Hackers Productions in association with Jagger Payton Radio, online at jaggerpayton.com.
Okay, then.
Co-produced and engineered by Steve Goody at Pitch Perfect Recording in Nashville. Check them out on the web at pitchperfectrecording.com.
Okay, then.
Theme music by Rebecca Kraft, produced by Steve Goody.
Okay, then.
Post-production assistance by Bill Levingston at Automatic Productions.
Okay, then.
And don't forget to check out our website where you can get my complete songwriter interviews, cool songwriter links, and more. It's BehindTheHitsRadio.com. And now for the legal stuff.
Alrighty then. Behind the Hits is copyright 2011 Bass Ackwards Productions. Any unauthorized reproduction will earn you a noogie. Any resemblance to persons living or dead is either unfortunate or just a coinky-dink, but still fun to do at parties. No animals were harmed during the making of Behind the Hits, unless you count the Ramalama Ding Dong, and we don't even know what that means.